I guess on Saturday. What were your immediate reactions? And now, as we talk on Tuesday evening, what are your reactions? You know, how have they changed over the couple of days? So walk me through your Jimmy Butler trade experience and your opinion of the trade.
Yeah, so I've been, I would say, fairly anti Jimmy Butler trade throughout the end of the offseason or end of the summer, throughout the early part of the season, preseason, when that really started picking up steam and became clear that he was going to demand a trade. I think for me, the biggest reasons were that I didn't think the fit was awesome on this team. I just thought that, you want someone who needs the ball in his hands a little bit less and is a better shooter. And I think other than that, I do think that Butler fills a nice role defensively. I think he gives the Sixers something they really don't have, which is someone who can create with the ball in his hands. And I mean, create for himself. Like Ben Simmons obviously is a playmaker, but because of his inability to shoot, you really can't put him in pick and roll at the end of a game and try to make something happen. Right. And I think with Fultz, you were hoping that would be kind of his development as a scorer. And with him at this point looking like he's probably going to be a bust, I think, getting Butler, I think really fills a need for them, with the exception of the fact that historically, I know this season he's having a good year and last year he improved, but historically has not been a great catch and shoot guy, has not been a super efficient shooter from the outside, which is really what the Sixers need with Embiid inside and Simmons just incapable of shooting from the outside. But I think so those are the reasons, in addition to contract, the fact that he's coming up on what might be $190 million 5-year deal next summer, and that he's going to be 30 next year with a lot of tread on the tires from playing under Tom Thibodeau. So all those reasons made me, in the lead up to it, pretty down on the trade. I think part of that for me was I was imagining they were going to have to give up a lot more than they ended up giving up. Mm-hmm. And I think my journey since the trade was when it first came down. This is when I got the Shams alert on my phone, and it just said the Sixers are trading for Jimmy Butler. It didn't say what for. I think I kind of had a pit in my stomach because I was really worried in that moment that it was going to be a huge package that involved one or both of the players that ended up being traded, in addition to future picks, in addition to maybe even Fultz. So I was worried in that moment, but I think then once it came through, it was more just kind of shock, because I think shock of losing Saric and Covington. Honestly, they've been two of the more consistent pieces on a team that's had a lot of turnover the last few years, and I like both of them a lot. Really like Robert Covington. I think he's an underrated player, and just like Saric because obviously the connection and to the process, and just kind of the waiting on him and then him coming over and actually being a better player than a lot of people expected. So I think then that shifted into okay, what are we actually getting with Butler, and how does this fit in the future with the cap, and what kind of money are they going to be working with next summer with his cap hold and all that? And once I started looking at that more closely, I think I started coming around on a couple things. One, the idea that having Jimmy Butler, having his bird rights, the ability to pay him a little bit more, the ability to give him that 5th year if you want to do that, and kind of getting him right now, and having in an Eastern Conference that I think the Raptors, we'll talk about this, I'm sure, but in an Eastern Conference that's more open than it's been in a long time, basically, and since LeBron went to the Heat, the East hasn't been this open. So I think getting a win now piece sooner actually has more value than I think I was really considering before. Yeah. But I also think that there's a couple things going on with Saric and Covington. So I know this is a really long-winded answer, but Saric is coming up on free agency in a couple of years, and I think it's going to be really hard for the Sixers to keep him. I think most likely he was going to get an offer somewhere else. Maybe they would have been able to work out a sign and trade. You don't always get a ton of value in those anyway, but I kind of was anticipating Saric was going to be the odd man out, right? Because they were going to try to play free agency this year or try to make a trade like they did. And even if Saric had been on the roster, paying him and Simmons in the same summer a big chunk of money, because Simmons is going to make a max, you would imagine, was going to be really tough. So I think the Saric part of it's less important. I think Covington, as a guy who's making 11, 12 million a year for the next 4 years, was tougher to swallow. But I think the upgrade from Covington to Jimmy Butler, and the fact that you're filling the same, defensive wing role with Butler, but just adding so much more that he's able to do that Covington can't is worth the difference in cost, the extra $18 million a year. So I think I just came around on it in those ways, and I'm still apprehensive about it. I still think it could go poorly. I think they could throw almost $200 million at him next year, and year 3 or 4 he could be really worn down, and it could be a really bad contract. So that's the part that concerns me. But I'm excited for now.
Yeah, I don't know if it's part of the Sixers thinking, but I've come around on this like worst case scenario. If Jimmy Butler leaves, the Sixers actually opened up their salary cap situation a little more. Like they actually maybe made more room next summer. Like possibly they could get like a Kemba Walker and a Chris Middleton if those guys don't both demand like full maxes because of losing the Saric and then the $12 million of Covington's contract. So I'm like, well, but also I feel like at least Woj has reported that there's some acknowledgement between the Sixers and Jimmy Butler's camp that they want to re-sign him and he's amenable to stay with the team. So where do you think in this Eastern Conference that it is kind of wide open, but is really, really strong at the top, probably stronger than most people thought it would be coming into the season? How do the Sixers compete? It's a very interesting roster lineup where you have 3 of the best 15, 20 players in the league on your team, but you're very shallow beyond that. And the Raptors and the Bucks and the Celtics look kind of incredible. So how is this team going to compete with those guys? And you can't use the words Wilson Chandler in your answer.
Yeah, I'll try not to use the words Wilson Chandler. That wouldn't be a very good answer. But I think I alluded to this before, but I think the Raptors are pretty clearly, to me, the number 1 team in the East. I think they're the favorites still, even with Butler. I think the Celtics, just because of Hayward's struggles to this point, the fact that Jason Tatum somewhat reverted back to the mean, or is just not a superhero like he was in the playoffs, it makes me feel a little bit better about the Celtics. I still think that's I'm certainly not discounting them, and the Bucks are obviously way better than we expected. I would say that the Sixers are in that class with. I'd say they're right there with the Celtics right now, and maybe the Bucks, right? I think the Raptors are clearly ahead of. I think the Sixers have to prove that, right? I think the fact that we haven't seen Butler play yet, it's hard for me to say that when you look at a team like the Bucks, who are where they are and are 10-3, But I think we'll know in a month or so. But I think the Sixers have, in terms of talent, have catapulted themselves into that conversation for the second best team after Toronto. I think what they really need to do between now and the playoffs, and I think this is part of why I don't really anticipate them getting a top 2 or 3 seed. I think they'll struggle in the regular season for a couple of reasons. One, because I think it's going to take some time to make this all gel. 2, right now they're still kind of in this position where I don't think you can just not play Fultz at all. I don't think you can just send him to Delaware or something, but I think he's hurting you clearly. And I think with Butler on the floor, it's going to be even harder to find a role for him. So I don't anticipate them shutting him down just because it would kill his confidence, kill his value, and basically just throw in the towel 12 games into the year, 15 games into the year, whatever it is. But I think that's going to hurt them. And then also I think their depth sucks. Their depth is awful right now. And I think what they're going to have to do is kind of what they did last year, which is kind of playing the buyout market and maybe making some low key trades, like maybe getting a Kyle Korver, who his name's been attached to the Sixers the last month or so, as a guy that if the Cavs, being where their season's going, just go all right, give us a second round pick and Kork Maz, and we'll give you Korver, that kind of thing, where they can maybe play that plus the buyout market. Like last year they got Ilyasova and Bellinelli after the deadline, just on as buyout candidates. And I think that really catapulted them. That was a big part of why they had that 17-game win streak, was their depth was so much better at the end of the year, and a big part of why they were competitive in the playoffs, minus most of the Celtics series.
I'll say if you guys are shopping that buyout market and you get Zach Randolph, I will buy me a Zebo Sixers jersey. So I don't know if.
Oh yeah.
Do you think, is TJ McConnell? Are they going to call his number? Are they going to be all right, listen, we know we screwed around with you, giving it all to Fultz, but it turns out as of now, November 15 or whatever, it's win now. We need you to play again, buddy.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because I think he will. I think he's going to have to, right? Like just looking at the rotation the Sixers have, like most likely, I think you use this as an opportunity to low key move Fultz to the bench. Like I think it was, you mentioned this before. I think it was a huge mistake to start Fultz, and I felt that way even before, even like the start of training camp when we really hadn't seen him yet, and they announced that he was going to start. I just thought it didn't make sense, right? Like putting that pressure on him and that expectation, especially given where he's at. Like even
I'm so sorry. It doesn't make any sense. When NBA teams do the thing like, hey, y'all, we know this guy isn't good as of our other players, we're going to start him. That's always weird. It's very strange when you're like, we're clearly not going to start our best players. It's like, why? Like, well, what good does this do anyone? But anyway, sorry to interrupt you.
No, it'd be one thing if it was a fit thing, right? Like if you were like, we're going to start later Shamet because Redick's hurt to start the year. Like that would make sense, right?
Oh,
like,
yeah, or if you're maintaining your rotations like the Trailblazers are doing. We're like, oh, this guy's hurt. Mo Harkless is hurt. Jake Layman, you can play a few minutes to start the games. But, you know, we're not forcing you minutes. And then in the second half, we're not doing it. In the second half, we're going to do a different thing because we realize this thing we're doing in the first half is not a way to win basketball games. So, yeah.
The explanation makes no sense. It's like whatever works in the first half is going to continue to work in the second half. So this idea that, the only value would be like, I guess you give Fultz a little bit of a taste of what it's like to start alongside the starting lineup, like the rest of the guys in the starting unit, but minimize that time. But that in itself shows you shouldn't be starting Markelle Fultz if you have to do that.
Right.
So
yeah.
It's just silly. And I also think he's better suited not playing with Ben. Like I think he's better suited in that, probably not now because he's pump faking his free throws, but like theoretically, Fultz would be better in a situation where you bring him off the bench and he's the point guard, and you're kind of looking at him to score because he can do that. He still he can still finish at the rim. He still has really nice handles. He can like grab a rebound and go. Like that stuff's all there in playmaking. So I don't think he'll be out of the rotation, even though I think his role needs to be decreased significantly. But I think what they'll do is you're going to have Ben Simmons, I guess at what you want to call the point, JJ Redick, Jimmy Butler, probably Wilson Chandler, maybe Mike Muscala, and Joel Embiid as the starters. And then after that, it's bad, right? It's after that, it's Amir Johnson. It's whoever of Chandler and Muscala don't start. It's Landry Shamet, TJ McConnell, and Fultz. And it's unfortunate because, like I was saying, because two of your best backups are guards, TJ McConnell and Landry Shamet right now, which is unfortunate that those are two of your best backups. You would love TJ McConnell to be a 4. If you were a power forward, he'd be starting.
Well, I don't know.
Likely.
It seems like TJ McConnell is their 5th best player. I guess you could, if you wanted to say Wilson Chandler is healthy, I'm projecting TJ McConnell is almost always available as far as health wise, or maybe like Mike Muscala. It seems like the McConnell, Simmons, Redick, Butler, Embiid is your best 5 players. I assume that's like what will be closing games a lot, like with Simmons guarding a 4. That makes sense to my brain, at least, those 5 guys together. But beyond that, yeah, it's like a wasteland.
Yeah, they've been doing that too with McConnell, just because of his defense. They brought him in the end of games that way. So I think it'll also depend on matchups. I could see it being a situation where their starting lineup is somewhat fluid, or at least that 5th starter is somewhat fluid. I think Redick cements himself at this point as clearly the guy you're going to start every game because he's a perfect fit along those guys, and also he's clearly one of their 4 or 5 best players. So
he's one of their 4 good. There are 4 good players on this team.
4 good players.
Yeah, like that's like I'm so excited for this trade as far as just as an NBA fan. Like it makes the East so interesting. It makes the NBA so interesting. It relieves the Timberwolves that were horrifying for everyone to watch. So like it's really cool. But it's an interesting experiment of. This team has 4 good players. They have 3 of the best players in the league, and then JJ Redick, and then like, whoa. And it's like an extreme drop-off. So it'll definitely be fun. To kind of wrap up, did you do anything, as someone like yourself who was a disciple of the process, did you do anything to commemorate the loss of Dario Saric and Robert Covington? Like, this is like the beginning of The Dark Knight, where there's that robbery scene, and like when everyone does their job, like the guy cuts off the communications, and like the guy gets inside the safe, then they shoot him in the back of the head because they're done with them. you're like, all right, you guys